Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon to our first webinar of 2022, a conversation with two of our favorite authors to talk about the power of reading and how it inspires and how it will inspire the next generation of change makers. With that, I have, like you, have fond memories of my favorite childhood books, and I'm sure you do too, and we'll explore a little bit of that today. Books when we were children really, I believe, help shape who we are as readers, as thinkers, as human beings, as members of society, and they are so important, and that was a huge belief of Barbara Bush, our founder. And that's why that it's more important than ever that we highlight these two authors today. Their books really encourage children to be their best selves, to be kind, to be imaginative, to be generous, to be inclusive, and to be courageous. Or in the words of one of today's authors, to dream big, to work hard, and to stay humble. And on that note, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our guest authors today. First, Eva Chen. Eva is a New York Times best-selling children's author of Juno Valentine and Magical Shoes, A is for Awesome, and Roxy and Last Unisaurus Rex. Well, Eva has been quite busy because she has released 2 books, not one, in the past week. She just released I Am Golden, which is one of my absolute favorites, which came out last week, and then hot off the presses this week is Colors of Awesome, 24 bold women who inspired the world. I don't know how she does it. She has 3 beautiful children, and she's holding on the job as director of head of fashion partnerships at Instagram. Eva, Godspeed. God bless you. I don't know how you're doing it, but it's so exciting. Thank you for your engagement with us, and thank you for being a National Celebration of Reading author. We're so grateful to have you with us here today. And our second author is Brad Meltzer. Brad was a dear and old friend of Barbara Bush. Brad is a #1 New York Times bestselling author, including his books The Escape Artist, The First Conspiracy, Secret Plot to Kill George Washington, Ordinary People Change the World series. And Brad also just released 2 new books, a whole series, which is pretty incredible. I Am Malala and I Am Muhammad Ali, that came out earlier this week as well. So we are truly cutting edge here at the Barbara Bush Foundation. I mean, hot off the press books, right? He's also the only man, to our knowledge, AKA the photo that you're seeing, that had the nerve to reenact chocolate candy conveyor belt scene from I Love Lucy with Barbara Bush. I mean, there you go. So lots of good stories that Brad has. And finally, and most importantly, I'm thrilled to introduce our moderator today, Ellie LeBlanc Sosa, and her beautiful new baby daughter, Dottie, who is our unofficial mascot. Ellie is also an author of George and Barbara Bush, A Great American Love Story, a book about the enduring decades-long relationship between her grandparents, George and Barbara Bush. Ellie is a certified holistic health counselor and vice president at BB&R Consulting right here in Washington, D.C. I've known Ellie for quite a bit of time when we were both working together in breast cancer at Susan G. Komen. And Ellie and her husband, Nick, live here in Washington, D.C., and as I said, are the parents of adorable little Dottie, our unofficial mascot. So with that, we will get started. Thank you, Brad, Eva, and Ellie. Ellie, over to you. Welcome, everybody.
Thanks, British.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And hi, Brad and Eva. It's so nice to see you guys here. I've actually seen both of you at the Celebrations of Readings. Eva just recently in Washington, D.C. and Brad, I've seen you at a few of them over the years. This is my first time moderating a webinar like this. So I just guess we will go ahead and get started. Neither of you started out as children's authors, but both of you were moved to begin writing inspiring and inclusive books that you believe children today need to read. So can you talk a little bit about what motivated you to start writing children's books?
Sure. Yeah, I can start and then I'll throw it to you, Brad. Brad, first of all, we have so many of your books at home, and I'm
Vice versa.
And I'm very impressed by like how prolific your bookshelf and well organized is behind you. And it's very inspiring because mine is just like, bleh. But soon one day I will have hopefully an entire bookshelf like you. Thank you, first of all, for having me. For me, and I touched upon this at the ceremony a few months ago, like writing children's books was always a dream of mine. I'm a first generation American. I spoke primarily or actually solely Mandarin Chinese at home until I was about the age of 6. And I remember once I started speaking English and learning to read and learning to write, just like everything clicked for me. And I think I learned a lot about the world around me through children's books. Like everything I learned about like how to be a human, basically. And I started writing children's books, I think like many, so it was always like a latent dream of mine, but I just never, it was always on the back burner. And like, I think many children's book authors, when I had my daughter, who's now 7 years old, I was in the habit of, reading the same book, oftentimes 7 or 8 times in one night. And I had this idea for a story about a little girl that kind of combined the thoughts of feminism, of fairy tales, and also of just fashion, because that was the main thing I knew. And so that was my first book series, Juno Valentine and the Magical Shoes. And the second book series was also inspired by my daughter, when she was once told by a cool kind of older friend, basically like a demigod to my daughter, as my daughter looked up to her so much, but she was told that girls don't like dinosaurs. And I was like, so offended by that I wrote a book series called Roxy the Last Unisaurus Rex about half dinosaur, half unicorn. And then the most recent book is called I Am Golden. I think I have one here. And that came out last week. And this is kind of like, I feel like I wrote the book that I never had growing up. It's about like it's an immigrant love story. It's an immigrant experience and a love letter, I would say, to my parents, and the experience of being Chinese American and feeling like I grew up between worlds. So that's my whole like biography in a nutshell. And Brad, I'm sure you will have a much shorter, snappier answer. So I'm going to throw it over to you.
No, thank you. And again, we thank you for your books, which obviously have helped with our kids. And I have a very similar story in terms of being inspired by my own family. I grew up in a house with really no books. My parents, I was the first in my family to go to a 4-year college. I got out, and my grandmother used to have the library card. We didn't have money, but we had that library card. And it was through books that I just found this entirely new world. I found Judy Blume, and I found Agatha Christie, and I found I could travel and I could do all these things what my family couldn't afford to do. And then I had kids, and I spent my life really writing thrillers and murdering people. And I think when you think of that, there's no better way to segue into children's literature when you say murder. And I wanted to give my daughter and my sons better heroes to look up to. And I was tired of them turning on the TV and seeing people who were famous for being famous, or people who, I just said, I can give them better heroes. So I gave my daughter Amelia Earhart. I was like, look, Amelia Earhart's amazing. She flew across the Atlantic. Isn't that fantastic? And my daughter said to me, big deal, Dad. Everyone flies across the Atlantic. And she was not impressed at all. She was about 7 years old, also, Eva, just like yours. And then I told her this amazing true story that when Amelia Earhart was 7 years old, she built a homemade roller coaster in her backyard. She took a wooden crate, she put roller skating wheels on the bottom, she shoved it up to the roof of her tool shed. She came coming down through these wood planks, flying through the air, crashes, gets back up again, yells, that was amazing, whatever she yells. And my daughter's like, tell me that again. And I realized in that moment, that was the secret sauce of our books, is showing these heroes when they were kids. So you can see them behind me. Chris Eliopoulos, our incredible artist, we did I'm Amelia Earhart, Abraham Lincoln, Rosa Parks, Albert Einstein. When the 2016 election happened, 2 of our books started selling more than any others. And they were I Am Martin Luther King Jr. and I Am George Washington. And it wasn't a Democrat or Republican thing. They were watching Trump and Hillary fight every day on TV. But I think parents and grandparents on both sides were tired of turning on the TV and seeing politicians, and what they wanted to show their kids were leaders. And we all know there's a huge difference between a politician sometimes and a leader, especially these days. And I felt like we could give them better heroes there. So we've done everyone from, you can see him behind me, I see Albert Einstein, and we did Jackie Robinson, here's Malala, we did Muhammad Ali. When I saw that Muslims were being picked on, more than ever, we did 2 Muslim books, the 2 new ones that came out 2 days ago. I said, we're gonna do Muhammad Ali and we're gonna do Malala. We had so many kids who were Asian American saying, you've done Everyone Wears an Asian American book. So we've done I Am Pei comes out. It was actually supposed to come out last year, but because of all the nonsense with supply challenges, it took later. But each time we try and find heroes that are representative of our kids there, because as Barbara Bush told me all those years ago, she said, kids sometimes don't always remember what you're reading with them. But when I had my first child, she told me they'll never forget that they were sitting on your lap with your arms around them and you have that time together. That was the vital part.
That's so nice.
That almost made me cry, like the thought of, it's beautiful.
It is.
No, true. Can't make it up. She told me that when I had my first child, she told me that. And I was like, I will never, when you have your first kid, you're all emotional. And I was like, I will never forget that advice. Every time I was like tired and my kids were tearing things apart, I'm like, come on, we're reading another one. Here we go.
No, I'm glad you said that too, because it really isn't something I've thought about much over the years. Of course, with my grandmother having the foundation, and of course, reading and literacy has been a big part of growing up for me. But now that I have my own daughter, to really, I thank you both for writing these stories that are so just inspiring and powerful for kids to learn about. So thank you. And I do have memories with my grandmother. Growing up reading, I might not remember the actual books we were reading, but just remembering, sitting with her and my grandfather reading books. So yeah, it's definitely special. So Barbara Bush, my grandmother, once said, reading opens the world to me and keeps me open to the world. Do you think that's especially true for young readers? What kind of influence do you think that books can have on children and who they ultimately turn out to be?
I mean, I think it's enormous. And I think we only have to look at books like the ones that Brad has written, and hopefully the ones that I've written, to shed light and to be a window or a mirror. I mean, I'm sure we've all heard this analogy before, right? That children's books can be windows or mirrors. So it's either a mirror to your own experience or a window into someone else's experience. And I think now more than ever, as Brad said, it's important to kind of create those moments of commonality and humanity, and just tap into the common themes of being children. So when I think about my book, I Am Golden, I did an event in DC at Kramer's a few weeks ago, and someone asked whether this was a book just for Asian American children. And I think there's so many universal themes in this book around being bullied or feeling othered or alone or just different sometimes. And so I do feel like we need books to continue just this growth and humanity and love and kind of inclusivity that frankly not every kid gets that at home. I was very fortunate to come from a family that showed love in its own unique way, but I think that children can look to books for a lot of things, not just kind of learning and education. They can look to books for comfort. They can look to books for joy or for a sense of family when their family life might be different. So books feed souls. And I think that's why the work that the Barbara Bush Foundation is doing is so important in kind of helping promote that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When we did, you always have your dream of what you want your book to do in the universe. And God knows if it ever happens. And when I Am Rosa Parks came out, I remember a friend of ours is from a mixed race family. So he's white, his daughter was black, adopted. And in the back of every book, it was very important that we always put in the last page a real picture of that person. So in the back of I Am Rosa Parks, a picture of Rosa Parks. And they're reading the book and he tells us the story. And she's 6 or 7 years old also. And they get to the end and she sees the real picture of Rosa Parks. And his daughter says to him, wait a minute, this really happened. This really happened. And he said suddenly he wasn't prepared for it, but he was having his first conversation about race with his daughter. And it's not, he's like, I'm from a mixed race family. I knew I should have had it earlier, but he was just too scared of messing it up. And I never in my wildest dreams could have thought that anything we work on could cause that. But I guarantee you, Eva's book, it creates these conversations that you never can anticipate. And I really feel like that's how the world gets changed. We all want to kind of these days point fingers and blame everyone who's wrong. But we all know that the real way you change the world is to change yourself. You have to start with yourself. And I think having that representation We go out in every single book and get the best minds. When we did Dr. King, I had Congressman John Lewis help us with the book. He's like, I love the series, I'm going to help you. Every single time we go out and find that person to say, how do we convey this to kids? Because it may be the first time they're seeing this world, or it may be reflecting their own world. But again, windows and mirrors, windows and mirrors.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. Again, with my daughter, she's still too young for any sort of real conversations to be happening, but those are going to be happening in the future, and to have these books that make it a little bit more tangible or just natural, kind of to have these conversations, not so forced. I can imagine it's going to be really helpful for us as we're, going through, raising a kid in this world. So both of you have touched a little bit on your most recent books, but I don't know if there's anything, if you wanted to go into a little bit more detail about what motivated you to write these particular books. I know both of you have two that just recently came out, and what specifically can kids learn from these books?
So for me, I said earlier that like I wanted to write a book that I never had growing up, and I literally remember growing up, like there was probably one book with an Asian character, and that was the Babysitter's Club. Claudia was the like super cool, I believe she's like she was Japanese, Babysitter's Club kind of member, and that was it. And so I grew up kind of reading books about precocious young women like Claudia or Christy or like Ramona, Matilda, Claudia Kincaid, like, the list goes on. But it was just so important to me to create a book with a main character that looks like me, a main character that, could kind of had my experience of growing up, like I'm trying to think of the kind of saying here. It's like, there's a line in my book that says, in this upside down world, clever child, you have become our teacher and translator. And so if you look at this image, you see May, the main character's parents, and they're in this kind of bright kind of lights, big city kind of moment. And when you flip it, you see them in their village in China. And this reflects my own experience, because growing up, my parents still speak primarily Mandarin Chinese, and I still am their teacher and translator. Maybe not teacher as much, but I call every doctor for them. I make every doctor's appointments for them. And I still feel like I live between two worlds. And so I wanted to create a book for children who might be living that experience, but also to help build empathy to those who aren't. And so I agonized over every detail of this book, down to I wanted May to look like she was basking in the sun, head tilted up, kind of to feel the warmth of the glow of the title, I Am Golden. And especially this year, there has been a huge rise in the number of anti-Asian hate crimes. There's been a lot of terms used, such as China virus, that have definitely hurt the Asian community. And so I felt like this book was more important to put out there into the universe than ever, so that kids who might see their parents nervous to go outside. I know that I don't stand on the subway platform anymore, because I'm so I'll wait upstairs and walk down when I see the subway, just because I'm nervous, which I shouldn't be in New York City, but I am. But I wanted to put something out there that would kind of help combat that hate and bring some joy, love, and celebration of the Asian American experience.
Yeah, and I love you for that, Eva. I couldn't agree more. I think in a strange way, people fight back in different ways. We're authors, right? We're creative, so we fight back with books and stories. And talk about fighting. It's Muhammad Ali. And our editor actually didn't want us doing Muhammad Ali for many years. We asked if we could do him, and she was like, I don't want to glorify violence, and he's a boxer. I'm like, it's not about the boxing. It's not about the boxing. It wasn't until everything started happening with Muslim Americans that I was like, this is crazy, And I love the fact that we get to, whether it's here on our little PBS Kids TV show we do also, that there are kids out there. It was vital that in here he says, I'm a Muslim. This is who I am. So they will identify and know when they're hearing all that hate in their house, or hearing, the China virus, or hearing that nonsense that is just repeated. This is how we fight back, right? And now they're going to find someone they love, or Malala also saying that she's Muslim. So they get to that story and say, I love her. And they'll pick up the book because the parent will like the series. And I'll read you this. I think this will say it all. And this is, we always do a before and after. So when he's young and when he's older. And it says, in my life, people tried to knock me down. They tried to count me out, but my biggest fights weren't in a ring. They were for principles, for things I believed in. Was I scared? I was plenty scared. I just didn't let it stop me. Anyone can pick a fight, but that doesn't make you strong. Real strength comes from being true to your beliefs and being willing to lose everything for what you think is right. When you do that, you'll truly be the greatest. And I need kids to hear that story and to say, for some, it's going to be like, wow, I have a Black hero, I have a Muslim hero, I love Muhammad Ali. And for others, it's going to be, oh my gosh, I've been hearing all this stuff about how, whether it's bad Muslims are, or this one is, or all the hate that's put out there, but someone to say, that's a human being. And the one thing I've learned, we're on, this is, I think, book 26, Malala's 27 in our series, is I'm a white man, right? With all these different heroes behind me. But the one thing I see over and over when I do all these stories is how much we have in common. And my God, as a country, we've gotten away from that, and we need to get back to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, couldn't agree more. That's, yeah, definitely. So right now for us, with my daughter, illustrations in the books and the imagery is so important. It helps her imagination run, even if she doesn't really understand the actual story yet. Both of you have amazing illustrations in your books. How or why did you choose the illustrators, and what do you think art brings to books?
Ooh, Brad, I want to hear your response for this one first, because I think that your books have I know you work with the same illustrator and they're so distinct. And the I Am Amelia Earhart, like the spread that you were talking about, where she's with the wooden boards and she's kind of flying and you see the kind of cart beneath her, like disintegrating. There's such joy and infectiousness in the illustration. So I'd love to hear your answer.
Yeah, no, I love you for it. I mean, Chris Eliopoulos is our secret weapon. Everyone's like, oh, Brad, your books. It's not my books, right? Mm-hmm. We all know there's like one or two names on the cover of every book, but only a fool thinks it's a one-person show. And Chris has this art style. You can look at it. It's kind of like Charlie Brown meets Calvin and Hobbes. And every cartoonist can do cute, and a good cartoonist can do funny. But the best cartoonists are the ones that can show heart. And that's hard. And I knew that if we wanted to introduce people to Rosa Parks or Dr. King or Amelia Earhart or Malala, we needed to have heart. And I want my kids off their phones. I want them off their screens. The only way to do that is you got to give them something better to look at. So, just as an example, like here's the end of I Am Malala, all these girls and all these amazing Muslim kids of every different shape and size and color. And Chris makes this look like it's the most beautiful, wonderful, as you said, even like the warm colors and the oranges and those things are vital. And he's the secret weapon. There's a reason we draw them as kids on purpose, because we wanted to make sure that kids see this and realize these aren't the stories of famous people. These people are just like you. This is what we're all capable of on our very best days. And the art is absolutely vital for making kids go, they don't care about my words. There are better writers than me who never get, who have written books on these people, but Chris's art is just the killer app.
So my process is a little bit different. So I have 3 book series, as I mentioned earlier. The Juno books are the illustrator's name is Derek Desierto. And then the second book series is called Roxy, and it's from an illustrator named Matthew Rivera. It's like watercolor based. This one is all done on a computer. And then I Am Golden was kind of a mix of the two, and the illustrator's name is Sophie Diao. So I found all my illustrators through Instagram, and I'm not just saying that because I work there. I came to the book publishing industry with very little knowledge in terms of how it truly worked. I was a magazine editor in a previous life. And so as a magazine editor, I was the one who was like, ooh, move the caption this way. And why don't we try the cover lines in this color? And like, ooh, let's use like a serif font, or I was very involved. And so when I came with my book, I didn't realize at the time that most illustrators and authors, and I know it's different for you, Brad, because you work so closely with Chris, but like, I didn't realize that most illustrators and authors like never talk. Like that literally, it's like all done through this like middle person of an art director. And so as an author, you hand in your manuscript, and then the art director and the publisher chooses an illustrator oftentimes without much consult from the author. And then the art director just kind of, magics the two together. And so when I started publishing my books, I was like, ooh, can we do this? And can we do that? And I was just like, I'm just going to talk to the illustrator directly. And like, everyone was like, is this really weird? This is like not how it is normally, but I love it. Like I do so enjoy being involved in like the kind of layout and direction of the book, down to the color of the foil. I remember getting these foil samples and putting them up kind of on different walls and kind of having my kids weigh in. Like this was super fun, like choosing the type of glitter. I wanted like a very specific, like fine grain glitter. And then all of these books, like this is called the Awesome series. It's a board book. And then like, so choosing the kind of foil rainbow, there's always a surprise at the end of the Awesome books, like they're for babies, but I've loved it. Sophie actually has a really interesting background. She actually works at Google full time. So we both work at tech companies, but when you go to google.com and you type it and you see the illustration that Google always has like art around it, and sometimes it's just art. She's actually one of a very small team at Google globally that she's one of the artists that create those. They're called Google Doodles. And so I found her because she, around the time there was a horrific shooting in Atlanta, like a hate crime, and she posted something that another illustrator named Ruth Chan had reposted to her stories. And I saw her Instagram and I was just like, this is the one, like she's the one I should kind of tap for this project. And for this series, I followed the hashtag dinosaur illustrations. You can follow hashtags on Instagram because my daughter loves seeing dinosaur illustrations, and Matthew's work kind of popped up. And then for like the Awesome books and Juno, Derek had tagged me in a photo. And so we started chatting, and like the rest is history. So it's kind of like I think my process is a little unusual for sure.
A little
But
different.
I love your process because it's your passion. I mean, I met Chris same way. I met him on Twitter. We just liked each other's stuff. I loved his work. He liked the things I did in history, and we found each other online. And it's totally backwards. Like Eva was saying, mostly they assign you and you never meet. And I hate that. I did it once with someone and it was no fun. I was like, I want to work together. It's a collaboration.
Right. That seems strange to not really be part of. It's kind of, yeah, it's your
I think
book.
it's because they probably think that Eve and I are like such control freaks and crazy. They just want to like protect the artist at all times. Or at least I'm speaking for myself.
Probably. No, there's a reason why I work with like mostly West Coast artists. It's because like I'm awake at 11 p.m. That's when I have like the space in my mind to like write and be creative, because up until then I'm like putting kids to bed and then like organizing and cleaning and trying to get ready, packing my kids like backpack for like Purple Hat Day or whatever ridiculous, like very specific kind of celebration they do in school where they're like, everyone has to wear a mask
Day of school.
eye, and it's always like there's always something so specific, and I'm like, and so like I'm always like frantically like making a purple hat with a pom-pom or something. So I feel like it's been good that I've worked with West Coast people, because they're always awake at like when I'm just about to be creative, they're like just getting out of their like day jobs.
Right. So when I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about some of the books that I loved growing up, the couple that just came to mind, one was Eloise, the other was the Amelia Bedelia books. So I was curious, for you guys, what were your favorite books growing up? And if there's any parents watching now, what books are you reading with your kids? What do you recommend? What should I be getting for Dottie for when she, gets a little bit older?
Get her A is for Awesome. That's a good book for your baby. It's cute.
Awesome, yeah. Well, and of course, I know everyone's going out and buying your books, but besides your books.
So what I'm reading to my kids right now, my daughter loves a series called Dory Phantasmagorie, and the author is Abby Hanlon. She lives in Brooklyn. I met her at a bookstore once and was like, and she definitely thought it was weird because I was like, we love your books. And I like bought all the books and I signed them. So that's a good series for kids who are just beginning to explore kind of chapter books. Someone in the chat suggested Ada Twist, Scientist. That's a great one. So that whole series is amazing. And I remember actually when I was kind of making the rounds for Valentine and like looking for a publisher, I met with the publisher of those books, and I remember like reciting the first book, Rosie Revere, like, this is the story of Rosie Revere who dreams of becoming a great engineer in Lila Greer's classroom, blah, blah, blah. Like I know the whole book by heart. And that's the thing with great children's books, is that you like start like learning them by heart and knowing them by heart. Like I know the beats and the cadence of like the Amelia Earhart book. Like I know exactly how to read it. And in creating books myself, like that's the kind of like, I definitely took that to heart, where it's like, what's the page that will like, where the parent is going to read it in a really loud voice. And then like, there's one scene in one of the Roxy books where it's like, I get my great smile from my parents, like, come closer, closer, closer. And it's like, I was trying to think of the way, like I could see myself reading it and kind of getting really close and goofy with my kids. My kids love the Dogman books. They can be quite polarizing with librarians, but I think anything that gets kids to read is so important. There's so many great books like Solway. Lupita Nyong'o wrote a beautiful book called Solway, which was honored at the last kind of gala as well. All the Oliver Jeffers books are like so wonderfully done. I met him recently and I asked him, like, I was like, is your handwriting really that quirky and cool? And he like broke out his notebook and it looked exactly like the Data crayons could. And it was like so satisfying. And another book I love, sorry, I'm going on and on because I really love children's books. There's a book called Julian as a Mermaid that is just like the most beautiful book. Like I read it, the first time I read it, I was like crying these big, like huge tears. It's just like a story of acceptance and like love, and kind of, there's not a lot of like dialogue in it. It's mostly these beautiful pictures, but I highly recommend that one.
Yeah, you took a lot of my answers. My kids, my two sons, all my kids were actually pretty reluctant readers, which is just the great irony, of course, when you write books. But what broke it through was Dave Pilkey. It was Captain Underpants and Dogman for one son and the other. And Dave's a dear friend now, and he came to the house. And I'll never forget watching my kids fall in love with reading. I literally watched them. They were just laughing at Dogman and falling in love with those books. And I always say, whatever gets you reading, go. I loved growing up. One of my favorite books was The Monster at the End of This Book, the Sesame Street book with Grover. I love that book. I remember reading it, and I got that for my kids, and my kids and it was one of those true generational books where I loved it as a kid and my kids loved it as kids. And we of course like the Fox and Socks and other Dr. Seuss things, but I think the book with no pictures by BJ Novak is a great book, really just as you're thinking of like fun and funny books. I read a lot of comic books, and as my kids have gotten older, I grew up on comic books, on Superman and Batman and Spider-Man. And they really gave me a morality and friends that I didn't have when I was little. They taught me right from wrong. I mean, and I have been able to get I think my youngest son just loves things that are graphic more. He just has a more art brain. He has a more creative brain. And so the more he can get in, see something that he can visualize, he always gravitates to the art. And comic books have been a great way to kind of keep his reading going beyond the children's book world. But this is a house that is truly, whatever room you go in this house, there are books. There's Hilo by Judd Winnick, for kids who are looking for that graphic novel experience. But I watch my 20-year-old, who's obviously much older, read our kids' books still and read kids' books. And my young one, who's, not even a teenager yet, read little books too. And I love the fact that all of my kids know that a good book is a good book. You don't age out of a good book. And I love the fact that I go into an independent bookstore or Barnes & Noble or any bookstore I'm in, and I'm always like, I'll browse the children's section. That's what I found about your books, actually. It wasn't with my kids. I was just going around. I was like, oh, look at these. And then I was like, okay, I can take this one and they take this one. But I look for myself because I love a good story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's actually, I was looking at the chat as you were talking, and lots of people wrote in their ideas. So this is great. Jesse Seema's books, Kindness is My Superpower, Jan Brett The Mitten, Goodnight Moon, The Giving Tree, The Chronicles of Narnia.
Classic.
They go on.
I have to say hi to Elisa because her 7-year-old is watching right now. So hi to her 7-year-old who has clearly good taste.
Oh,
so sweet. So as we're sort of going to wrap up here, I did want to ask you both what is next for you. I am, and I'm sure a lot of people follow you both on Instagram and everywhere, Twitter, wherever you are. But yeah, what's next for you? Do you have more books on the horizon? Any other projects that we can keep an eye out for?
I feel like I had 3 books come out in 4 months. And so I'm ready for like and a baby come out, I guess, like 8 months ago. And so my publisher and my book agent were already like, what's next? And I'm like, can I just take like a really long nap and like kind of think about it, marinate on it? I'd love to write a guide, like, so like the Awesome book series actually became a companion book to the Juno Valentines. I'd love to write a companion book kind of to I Am Golden with like Asian luminaries and kind of notable figures throughout the ages. I guess a book like that does not exist yet. And we're at this time when they're just beginning to talk about teaching more Asian history and within American history, and I think that's so important. But I do kind of want to like, my theme for 2022 is like restore. Like, just I feel like I need like to take this year to like post baby, post like mad sprint of a book tour, and just ready to kind of like take like a little bit of a break, just a little.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I could use that nap as well. I'm going to show you. I'm probably not supposed to show you, but I don't care because my publisher's not here. So we announced these today. I'll show you right now. We're doing a thing with DC Comics. I Am Superman. So we're going from not just the Ordinary People Change World series. We announced this truly today on Instagram and everywhere else. It's called Stories Change the World. We're doing Batman, which is fun. I brought one. The next one that comes out this is one of my favorites. Dolly Parton is coming. And I just want you to know, we tried to get glitter on the cover. There was glitter on the cover, and they just like last week took it off because of supply chain things. Or word it was going to delay it. I was just like, don't lose the glitter on Dolly Parton. And then this one is actually really fun, which I can only bring here. We're going to break the Guinness Book of World Records for the biggest book in the country, in the world. And where else are you going to do it but in Texas? So we are doing I Am Texas. Now, if you look really close, you should recognize one person.
Oh, yay.
So we got Mrs. Bush on the cover when we were going to do it. We're going to do it in Houston with a charity there that is, it's all for this wonderful charity that encourages kids to write their own books. And all these kids from around the state will be submitting their stories. They'll get to be published authors. Chris, of course, did the cover. And I just demanded that Mrs. Bush be on the cover of the whole thing.
You're wearing her pearls? Because you might have to add those in.
Do you really think we're playing around here? There are pearls.
Of course. Okay, good.
Just come on. I was like, if they don't get the pearls right, we're in trouble. So yes, the pearls were drawn in. So obviously she's been so kind to me and all these years that I felt like I had to do that when we were talking about literacy for kids. So I Am Texas is not a real book, but it's basically going to be the one that breaks hopefully the Guinness Book World Records. But yes,
Brad,
then I did now.
How many books do you come out with in a year? This is like,
you know what? Yeah, this is the most we've done. In fact, and I should say the last one is the biggest one we're going to do is our new thriller, which comes out next month. And that's the biggest thing we'll do, the lightning rod. But the truth is, Eva, I usually will do like 3 books a year because of the supply chain. They 3 of them got pushed into this year. So everyone's like, oh, you're so efficient, you're so fast. I'm like, no, it's that we didn't do anything last year because of supply problems. And so everything got pushed into this year. So it looks like I'm far busier than I am.
Was it like 5? I need the number.
So this year, we're literally going to do 2, 4. We're going to do 6 plus a thriller. So we're going to do 7 books. We're doing 2 book tours in a month. I mean, don't ask. It's going to be a busy time, but obviously, exciting. But just to finish, because I think what you said is important. It's interesting, our theme this year, because I have the same thing. It's so funny how we think that. But I've really been trying to kind of being present is kind of the big thing for me this year, especially with my kids and my daughter. I'm going to just tell the story. I never get to tell it, but my daughter, who grew up on our kids' books and then kind of became her own little teenager, she realized that women especially have a secret identity. They keep a side of themselves hidden from everywhere else. We all do it. And she said, I want to have people reveal their secret side, their secret identity. And I said, that's great. If you want people to do it, then you have to do it first. And she's like, I'm not doing that. And I said, you have to. And so she, at 15 years old, went on Instagram and wrote, people think I have it all together. My secret identity is I struggle. And my daughter put that out on Instagram. This is a year ago. And obviously some kids in school and her friends started writing things. A girl in her school confessed her eating disorder. An autistic girl was like, people think I'm weird, but I just, like different things than everyone else because I'm autistic. And then Sheryl Sandberg did one, and Billie Jean King heard about it. And She's been on Good Morning America. Rachel Ray she did it live on Rachel Ray's show. And I'm telling you this story simply because I've watched my kids kind of my dream for them. And whatever I dream for them wound up being a little different in their own way. But I'm trying to take my daughter's thing and be present, not be that, out there as much as I used to be. I pick these events very carefully now. And obviously this is one I care a great deal about with literacy. But that's my goal for the year, is to try and follow my daughter's lead. I feel like I've spent so much time trying to teach her, and now I'm like in the mode of I'm going to learn from her and see what we can do.
I love that. That's so great. Well, thank you both so much, Eva and Brad, for doing this. And I know there's a lot of folks here that are taking fervent notes. There's 2 grandmothers on here I know in particular that probably on Amazon or at their local bookstore buying buying all these books now.
Yes,
So.
please buy Eva's books. They're great.
Yes.
Please go buy everyone.
Buy Brad's books, all 6 of them.
Yeah. Eva and Brad, thank you both so much. We are right at time, and our honorary chair, Ellie's mom, says thank you to all of you as well. Hopefully you saw Dora Bush Cook pop up in the chat. So on behalf of the foundation and the board and the staff, we are grateful for your time, talent, and treasure, but the way that you both so beautifully make the world really a better place. And so we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for doing that, and for all that you're doing for all of our children and for our future as a country. So thanks again. And Eva, you don't know this, but as Brad said, once you're in the Barbara Bush Foundation orbit, you never get to leave. So Eva, you're not going anywhere. We're going to come back for you.
They hook you in.
That's right.
I like this orbit though. It's so like welcoming and warm and Texan. Like I feel like they're like warm, happy vibes.
It's awesome. So thank you both again. Everybody go out and buy their books. They're amazing. And we will see you all next time. Enjoy the rest of your week. Much love. Thanks.
Bye,
Thanks to you
everyone.
both.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Ellie.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, British. Good to see you.
You too, Brad. Thanks.